You don't need to listen closely. Your body already knows this place. Welcome to Dream Physiology. There's a moment each night when the world begins to let go of the weight it carried through the day. The light fades, the noise softens, and everything around you settles into a slower rhythm. You may not always notice this shift as it happens. Sometimes you move straight from one task to the next, unaware of how quietly the evening has wrapped itself around you. Yet your body feels it, your mind feels it. Even the deeper emotional layers inside you sense the invitation that night brings. Throughout the day, emotions collect inside you in ways you cannot always track. Some rise quickly and fade. Some linger beneath the surface. Some rest in the chest like a quiet pressure. Others move through the body in small, nearly invisible waves. By the time night arrives, you have gathered an entire landscape of emotional impressions, and whether they are heavy or light, your physiology prepares to carry them into a place where they can soften and reshape themselves. Night is not only a time for physical rest, it is the primary place where your emotional life reorganizes itself. While you sleep, your brain shifts into patterns that allow you to release what you could not release during the day. It processes what felt confusing, it softens what felt sharp, it rewrites what felt overwhelming, and it strengthens what you want to carry forward. Emotional healing does not happen in the daylight. It happens in the quiet hours when the world is no longer looking at you. It happens when your breath slows and your thoughts begin to dissolve. It happens when darkness surrounds you with stillness and your senses retreat from the demands of waking life. Only then can the deeper systems inside you take the emotional pieces scattered through your day and begin their slow, careful reconstruction. Your brain changes at night in ways that are uniquely tied to emotion. The amygdala settles, the prefrontal cortex steps back, the hippocampus opens its gates for integration. These regions work together not with speed or force, but with softness. They create a gentle terrain where emotion can move without resistance, where feelings can be touched without fear, where memories can be approached without the weight they once held. Sleep creates a sanctuary. It becomes a shelter that protects your emotional world from the intensity of consciousness. In this sanctuary, your brain has the freedom to explore, reorganize, and heal what living has scattered throughout your system. Each stage of sleep brings a new level of emotional restoration. Deep sleep stabilizes, REM sleep reshapes, dreaming provides emotional rehearsal, symbolic processing, and release. Morning arrives with a mind that has been repaired in ways you cannot see but can always feel. You might not remember the moment when sleep first touches you. Sometimes it feels like drifting. Sometimes it feels like sinking. Sometimes it feels like a door closing gently behind you. But each night, the same ancient process begins. Your body lowers its defenses, your breath finds a rhythm, your thoughts lose their edges, and slowly your emotional world steps into a place where it is allowed to change. No matter what your day held, sleep becomes the bridge that carries you from emotional tension to emotional clarity. It gives your heart a place to rest. It gives your mind a place to breathe. It gives your body the chance to step out of its reactive patterns and into a quieter form of being, one where healing becomes possible. Tonight, as you enter this story, Imagine that you are stepping into a landscape created only for you, a landscape built of slow light, gentle shadows, soft currents, and distant quiet, a place where nothing is expected of you except to let yourself be held by the night. This story will guide you deeper into this landscape, part by part, until you arrive at the space where your emotions begin their quiet restoration. Now the night is ready, your breath is ready, your mind is ready, and you are ready to see how sleep becomes the place where your emotional world is rebuilt with care and tenderness. We begin. Every human day gathers emotional weight. Some of that weight is easy to identify. A disagreement, a moment of tension, a memory that returns unexpectedly, a decision that felt difficult, a feeling that grew stronger than you anticipated. But much of the emotional weight you carry is subtle. It builds quietly. It lives in the spaces your conscious mind rarely visits while you are awake. You carry emotional impressions in your breath, even when you do not realize it. Your breath may shorten during moments of stress. It may deepen when you find peace. It may tighten without warning when you feel uncertain. Each of these changes leaves a trace inside your body. As evening approaches, these traces accumulate, and your body prepares to take them into sleep. Your chest carries emotional signatures as well. The muscles around your heart respond quickly to what you feel. A small conflict may tighten the chest only for a moment, yet the body remembers it. A quiet worry may sit there for hours. A sense of longing, hope, fear, or desire can settle into the chest with surprising weight. These emotional impressions travel with you into night. Your mind holds emotional residue from the simplest and most ordinary interactions. The tone of someone's voice, a look you noticed but did not interpret, a thought you pushed aside, a moment of hesitation, a moment of gratitude, a small kindness you offered, a disappointment, a hope, a memory that brushed against you. All of these become part of the emotional content that sleep needs to process. During the day, your brain cannot heal these impressions fully. It is occupied with tasks, decisions, speech, planning, and reaction. Consciousness requires constant energy. It keeps you focused on what is external, which means your inner landscape cannot be reorganized while you are awake. Emotional healing is not a daytime function. It requires the night. As you approach sleep, your nervous system begins preparing the emotional material you gathered throughout the day. The sympathetic system, which kept you alert and responsive, begins to yield its influence. The parasympathetic system rises slowly. Heart rate lowers, breath deepens, muscles relax. This shift is not only physical, it is emotional. The body lowers its guard so the mind can access the emotional layers that were too delicate to touch during the day. Your brain begins sorting. It takes the emotional experiences and places them in a temporary holding space. It examines them not for logic, but for tone, feeling, intensity, and meaning. This emotional sorting happens in the moments before you fall asleep. It is the quiet internal gathering that prepares you for the deep work of the night. Some feelings rise to the surface more strongly as you get ready for sleep. Others seem to disappear. This shifting is part of the brain preparing itself. The amygdala evaluates emotional significance. The hippocampus takes note of memories that need integration. The prefrontal cortex begins its descent into rest, stepping away from its daytime responsibilities so your deeper emotion centers can move freely. Your emotional body loosens its structure. What felt solid begins to soften. What felt rigid begins to loosen its edges. Emotional weight becomes fluid, capable of being carried through the night stages of healing. As your eyelids grow heavy and your breath slows, the emotional landscape inside you begins its nightly journey. A journey where tension dissolves, a journey where memories find their place, a journey where feelings transform into something lighter, clearer, and more bearable. When you finally cross the threshold into sleep, the emotional world you carried into night follows you inward. And from this moment forward, the night takes responsibility for you. It becomes the place where your emotional life is held with care. This is where healing begins. As you drift away from the edges of wakefulness, your emotional world begins to loosen its grip on the patterns it held throughout the day. This transition is delicate. It moves slowly, like a soft curtain being drawn across the surface of your thoughts. The descent into night is not only the shift into sleep, it is the moment when your emotional body prepares to step out of daylight awareness and into the deeper processes that only exist in darkness. Your brain senses the change first. Light fades from your environment. The signals reaching your suprachiasmatic nucleus begin to quiet. The internal clock that guided your alertness throughout the day now starts redirecting its rhythms inward. As melatonin rises, your emotional landscape becomes less tied to external stimulation and more connected to the slow internal tides of night. The amygdala reduces its reactive sensitivity. It prepares to move from immediate emotional response to a more reflective, reorganizing state. This moment, just before sleep, has a unique emotional tone. You may feel yourself loosening from the structure of wakefulness. Thoughts become softer, less linear. Feelings that were tightly woven into your thinking begin to separate and drift. Your body registers this transition through subtle shifts. Your heart rate lowers, your breath deepens, your muscles quiet. The parasympathetic system begins to take control, guiding your body into a state where emotional healing becomes possible. The descent into sleep is like entering water. At first, you feel the surface tension, the thin boundary between waking and resting. Your thoughts flicker. Your attention moves in and out of focus. You may revisit parts of your day in flashes. These flashes are not random. They are the brain's attempt to gather emotional fragments and prepare them for deeper processing. The hippocampus begins tagging certain memories that will need reorganizing. The amygdala notes emotional intensity that must be softened. The prefrontal cortex begins releasing its tight control over what you notice and how you evaluate it. Your emotional world grows quieter, not empty, not numb, quiet. This quietness is necessary. The brain cannot begin emotional healing until it is no longer interrupted by the demands of conscious awareness. Daylight keeps the emotional circuits tied to reaction. Night separates them from the external world so they can be restructured internally. Without this descent, the emotional residue of the day would remain tangled. You would wake with the same tension you carried into sleep. This quieting stage is also physical. Emotional experience is not separate from your body. The tightening in your chest that appeared in the afternoon begins to loosen. The heaviness in your stomach that you carried since morning begins to lift. The subtle ache behind your ribs begins to soften. Emotion lives in tissue. Emotion moves through breath. Emotion settles into muscle and nerve. As you enter this early stage of night, the body provides the entry point for release. Each slow breath becomes a signal that the emotional systems can begin letting go. Your brain waves shift as well. Beta waves associated with active thinking begin to fade. Alpha waves emerge in their place. They slow your internal rhythm. They loosen the boundaries between thoughts. They prepare your mind to surrender to the deeper layers of consciousness. This shift from beta to alpha is the emotional doorway to sleep. It is the moment when you step out of daylight emotion and begin entering nighttime emotion. Nighttime emotion is different. It does not require clarity. It does not require language. It does not require action. It simply needs space, and sleep provides that space. The descent into sleep opens the emotional landscape so that feelings can move without being judged. Thoughts can drift without being analyzed. Memories can surface without pressure. This freedom allows your emotional networks to reorganize, recalibrate, and heal. As you sink deeper into this stage, the thalamus begins to reduce incoming sensory information. The world outside fades. Sound becomes distant. Light becomes irrelevant. Physical sensations begin to dull. The brain does this to protect you. Emotional healing requires isolation from external input. The less your senses demand attention, the more energy your brain can direct inward. The emotional centers have waited all day for this moment. They are ready to begin their work. Your descending consciousness mirrors this shift. You may feel yourself floating. You may feel yourself sinking. You may feel yourself dissolving. These sensations are the mind's interpretation of the loss of sensory dominance. When the outside world falls away, the inside world begins to rise. The emotional body takes its place at the center of your experience. This is not a dramatic transition. It is gentle, subtle, like a slow tide moving in around your feet. The early stage of sleep, known as N1, begins here. It is shallow, quiet, and easily interrupted. But beneath its soft surface, important emotional preparation is taking place. The amygdala begins stepping out of its reactive mode. The prefrontal cortex reduces its control even further. Your emotional brain is taking the first steps toward releasing the weight it carried through the day. As N1 deepens into N2, more of your emotional world becomes accessible. Sleep spindles begin appearing. These bursts of neural activity are not random. They serve a protective purpose. They shield your sleep from external disturbance. They strengthen the transition from wake to deeper sleep. But they also prepare your brain for emotional memory consolidation. Spindles act like gentle gates, allowing certain emotional impressions to pass through while blocking others. The brain is deciding which emotional pieces require deep processing later in the night. This stage of sleep is the emotional threshold. It is where the weight of the day begins to shift into the hands of the night. You no longer control what rises inside you. Your conscious mind lets go. Your emotional mind begins to take the lead. In this descent, there is also relief. The effort of holding emotion throughout the day is quietly removed. The physiological systems responsible for emotional reaction are allowed to rest. They are not turned off. They are simply placed in a state where they no longer need to protect you. The night takes over that responsibility. As you move further into the early depths of sleep, your body and mind share a moment of agreement. They surrender together. They enter the darkness not as a withdrawal, but as a turning inward. The emotional body is ready to be held by the night. It is ready to be reorganized. It is ready to heal. The emotional energy you carried into the night has now settled enough to allow the deeper processes to begin. You are still close to the surface of consciousness, but you are beyond the reach of the day. You have stepped into a place where emotion can move freely, without resistance. A place where the weight you carried can finally begin to loosen. Soon, the night will guide you into the deeper stages where the real emotional healing begins. But before that journey continues, this descent into emotional quiet must be complete. This is the threshold. You have crossed it with tenderness, whether you noticed or not. The night holds you now. When consciousness finally releases its hold on your waking world, your emotions do not disappear. They descend with you. They follow the slow shift into deeper layers of night and settle into the quiet spaces where healing can begin. Understanding what happens to your emotions during these early, deeper stages of sleep reveals one of the most gentle and protective processes in your physiology. As you move from the light descent of early sleep into the firmer ground of stage N2 and the beginnings of slow-wave sleep, your emotional systems continue to change their structure. The external world fades almost entirely. Sensory input is no longer the priority. Your brain has redirected its energy. Emotional material becomes the central focus. Feelings that were scattered across many regions during the day begin to gather in specific networks. Your emotional body is being prepared for the restoration that slow-wave sleep will soon provide. The hippocampus plays a significant role at this point. Throughout the day, it has been collecting impressions, memories, and emotional cues, but it cannot fully organize them while the conscious mind is active. The pressures of the day require the hippocampus to respond quickly. It records and holds information, but it does not have time to distribute it into long-term storage or integrate emotional context. Only when consciousness lets go does the hippocampus begin this work. During early, deepening sleep, the hippocampus opens its vault. It begins sorting the emotional components of your day, identifying which ones need deeper processing, which ones are ready for integration, and which ones must remain accessible for REM-based emotional healing later in the night. This sorting is subtle. It happens silently, without any sensation, yet it determines the emotional tone with which you will greet the next day. At the same time, the amygdala continues its shift away from reactivity. During waking hours, the amygdala prioritizes rapid response. Fear, threat, stress, anticipation, even excitement all activate this region. The amygdala assists you in navigating the social, physical, and emotional challenges of your environment. But the amygdala cannot heal emotional patterns during the day. Its job is to protect you. Healing is not protection. Healing requires vulnerability. It requires openness. Those conditions are only possible when consciousness rests and the world no longer makes demands on your attention. The prefrontal cortex continues its descent into rest. This region helps you analyze, plan, judge, interpret, and manage your emotions. It provides structure, it provides restraint, it prevents impulsive action. But it also filters and suppresses emotional material that may feel too overwhelming to process in the middle of your responsibilities. At night, this restraint must be removed. Emotional healing requires a reduction in prefrontal control so emotional circuits can move freely. This is why emotions sometimes float upward as you fall asleep. Memories may appear unexpectedly. Feelings may rise without cause. Thoughts may drift into places you avoided during the day. None of this means your emotions are worsening. It means your brain is preparing them for processing. Conscious control fades and emotional truth emerges. This emergence is not threatening, it is necessary. It is part of the path toward balance. As you ease into early slow-wave sleep, your brain waves become slower, larger, and more rhythmic. These slow waves act like a tide that moves through the cortex. They create periods of deep neural silence followed by gentle bursts of coordinated firing. This rhythm is essential for resetting neural circuits. It is also essential for emotional healing. Emotions often settle into neural patterns that repeat throughout the day. Slow waves disrupt those patterns. They quiet activity in the circuits that held emotional tension. They create a temporary emptiness into which new organization can unfold. During these slow-wave periods, your emotional brain becomes quieter than at any other time in the night. This quiet is not the absence of emotion. It is the environment emotion needs to shift safely. It is the moment when the brain pulls emotional material out of immediate experience and prepares it for the reprocessing that will occur during REM. Without this stage, REM would simply intensify existing emotions. Instead, slow-wave sleep softens them. It lays the foundation for transformation. Your body participates in this process. As your brain quiets, your heart rate drops into its lowest range of the day. Your breathing becomes steady and deep. Your muscles enter full relaxation. Blood pressure dips. Cortisol levels fall to their lowest point. All of these physiological changes support emotional quiet. They send the message that there is no threat, no urgency, no need for vigilance. The emotional body receives this message and settles into the safety required for deeper work. This safety is not an illusion. It is the physiological truth of the night. Your nervous system has shifted into its most restorative mode. The parasympathetic system supports every organ. Your vagus nerve guides your heart and breath into harmony. These signals reach the emotional centers of your brain. They announce that the world is calm enough for emotional material to surface without danger. Feelings stored in your body begin to loosen. Muscles that held memories soften. The diaphragm releases tension. The gut relaxes its defensive patterns. Emotional residue that accumulated in tissue begins to unhook from its physical anchors. This physical release is essential to emotional healing. Without the body's participation, the emotional mind would remain tangled. As slow-wave sleep stabilizes, the hippocampus becomes deeply engaged. It begins transferring memories into long-term storage, but it does not transfer them exactly as they appeared during the day. It transfers them stripped of unnecessary emotional intensity. It saves the information, not the distress that accompanied it. This is why certain experiences feel lighter after a good night's sleep. The brain has taken the emotional load away from the memory.
and stored the memory in a cleaner form. But not all emotional material is ready for final organization. Some experiences remain too charged. These are held aside. Slow wave sleep identifies them and prepares them for symbolic, expressive, and emotional reprocessing that will occur during REM. The emotional mind cannot heal everything at once. It must first stabilize the foundation, then process deeper layers. Slow wave sleep provides that foundation. Throughout this stage, the emotional networks of the brain continue reorganizing themselves without your awareness. Networks associated with stress calm themselves. Networks associated with safety strengthen. Circuits that held emotional residue reduce their activity. The brain is clearing space. It is creating the architecture needed for deeper restoration later in the night. This entire process occurs without sensation. You do not feel the shift. You do not notice the reorganization, yet its impact is profound. Without this stage of sleep, emotional processing would not be possible. Feelings would accumulate without release. Memories would remain tangled. Emotional patterns would repeat without adjustment. Slow wave sleep prepares the emotional world for transformation. Deep within this stage, your body and mind reach a profound stillness. This stillness is not emptiness, it is potential. It is the spacious quiet in which healing begins. Soon, your brain will transition into the vivid inner world of REM, where emotion will take shape in dreams and be reshaped with care. But for now, you remain in the soft architecture of early night, where the emotional body becomes ready to let go.
The darkness around you is gentle. The world inside you is quiet. This is the fertile ground on which emotional healing grows. The night has begun to take your emotional weight, and now the deeper layers of your mind prepare to enter the stage where transformation becomes possible. Deep, slow wave sleep is the place where your emotional world finds a silence so complete that healing becomes not only possible, but inevitable. This stage is often described as the body's deepest rest, but it is also the moment when your emotional networks fall into a profound stillness. That stillness is not passive. It is an active, restorative quiet that allows your brain to repair what emotional stress has worn down through the day. As you enter slow wave sleep, your brain waves shift into large, slow rhythms that wash through your cortex in waves. These waves move like soft tides, rising and falling with perfect coordination. Every time a slow wave rises, a vast field of neurons becomes silent. Every time it falls, they fire together in a synchronized burst of activity. This alternating rhythm creates a pattern that clears emotional clutter from the mind. It is one of the most important steps in the path toward emotional stability. During the day, emotions scatter your attention in many directions. Stress, excitement, worry, hope, frustration, longing, disappointment, and anticipation all activate different networks. These networks overlap, compete, and interlock. They create noise. They create tension. Slow wave sleep removes this noise. It quiets every emotional network at the same time. It resets the system in a way that waking life cannot. Your amygdala, which reacted strongly during the day, becomes almost silent in slow wave sleep. This silence is essential.
When the amygdala rests, emotional charge drains from your memory circuits. The memories you formed during the day remain intact. The emotional charge surrounding them fades. This shift protects your emotional balance. Without it, emotional residues would accumulate and attach themselves to new experiences. You would wake each day heavier than the day before. Slow-wave sleep prevents this accumulation. The hippocampus continues its work during this stage, but now it moves more slowly, more intentionally. It takes the emotional memories sorted earlier and begins the process of separating factual content from emotional tone. This separation is delicate. The hippocampus must maintain the integrity of the memory while releasing the emotional intensity associated with it. Slow-wave sleep provides the neurological conditions for this delicate task. The quiet background created by slow waves allows the hippocampus to reorganize memories without interference. Your brain's emotional networks also use this time to redistribute energy. Neurons that were overly active during the day finally receive the rest they need. Emotional tension is not just psychological, it is neurological. It creates persistent activity in certain circuits. Slow-wave sleep interrupts that activity. It shuts off emotional loops that may have been running endlessly. It gives your emotional brain the freedom to reset. Your body participates fully in this quieting process. Heart rate reaches its lowest point of the night. Breathing becomes deep and regular. Blood pressure dips in a healthy, restorative way. Muscles relax more completely than at any other time. These physical changes signal to your emotional centers that the environment is safe. Without that sense of safety, emotional healing cannot occur. Your body tells your emotional brain that nothing is required of you. No vigilance, no reaction, no defense. In this stage, your autonomic nervous system shifts its balance dramatically. The parasympathetic system dominates.
The sympathetic system, which keeps you alert and ready during the day, steps back entirely. This shift has direct consequences for emotional health. When the sympathetic system is active, emotional circuits remain primed. They react quickly and strongly. Slow-wave sleep removes this priming. It lowers baseline emotional arousal. It sets a new calm level for the following day. Deep within the brain, glial cells begin their cleanup work during slow-wave sleep. Although the glymphatic system is often discussed in terms of physical waste removal, it also indirectly supports emotional healing. Emotional intensity increases metabolic waste in certain networks. Cleaning those networks improves emotional clarity. It gives your brain a fresh physiological foundation. Without this cleanup, emotional circuits would remain foggy, cluttered, and inefficient. One of the most surprising aspects of slow-wave sleep is how it protects you from your own emotional memories. In waking life, certain memories feel too sharp or too vivid. They may resurface unexpectedly. They may carry emotional disruptions that interfere with your day. Slow-wave sleep places those memories into a gentle holding pattern. It prevents them from intruding into your awareness while preparing them for the emotional reprocessing that will occur during REM sleep. This holding pattern is like placing fragile items into a safe place until you can handle them with care. Even dreams behave differently during slow-wave sleep. They are rare, shallow, and fragmented. Slow-wave sleep does not give emotion a stage to express itself. It gives emotion the silence it needs to rest. This is why slow-wave sleep can feel like disappearing. It is a form of emotional suspension. You are not confronting your feelings during this stage. You are allowing them to rest without pressure.
Your internal chemistry reflects this rest. Stress hormones remain low, growth hormone rises, which not only repairs tissue but also supports emotional resilience. The immune system becomes active in gentle ways that indirectly bolster emotional strength. A healthier body supports a calmer emotional mind. The two systems are deeply connected. Slow-wave sleep strengthens both. This deep emotional quiet also prepares your brain for the next stage of healing. Without slow-wave sleep, REM sleep would not have the stability it needs. Slow-wave sleep acts as the stabilizing foundation, the emotional anchor that keeps you from being overwhelmed when REM dreams begin. It reduces emotional load so that REM can reshape emotional memories rather than intensify them. The transition through slow-wave sleep can last several cycles through the night. Each cycle reinforces emotional balance. Each cycle quiets emotional charge. Each cycle resets the networks you rely on for stability, clarity, and resilience. Your emotional world is not being erased in this state. It is being soothed. It is being held in a gentle stillness that protects it from the chaos of waking life. This stillness allows your emotional self to prepare for the symbolic, expressive, deeply meaningful work of REM sleep. Without this stage, emotional healing would not be possible. Slow-wave sleep is the emotional night soil, the soft ground in which emotional transformation takes root. And now, as the brain prepares to move into REM sleep, your emotional body begins shifting once again. You are moving from silence into expression, from rest into reprocessing, from emotional stillness into emotional transformation. The deepest work is about to begin.
As the deep stillness of slow-wave sleep begins to fade, your brain prepares to shift into a completely different landscape. The quiet of slow-wave sleep has cleared the emotional ground, settled neural activity, and opened the pathways that now allow your emotional world to rise again in a gentler form. The next stage, REM sleep, is where emotion begins to move, reshape, and heal. Transitioning into REM sleep is not sudden. The brain slowly pulls itself out of the heavy embrace of slow-wave rhythms. The waves grow smaller and faster. Neurons begin firing with greater spontaneity. The silence that held your emotional mind begins to loosen. A soft internal brightness emerges. This shift marks the beginning of one of the most remarkable emotional processes in human physiology. REM sleep is the place where emotional healing becomes active and expressive. While slow-wave sleep provided rest and stabilization, REM allows your feelings to transform. It is the only state where the emotional centers of the brain become highly active, while the logical centers, the ones that judge and analyze, remain quiet. This combination is the key to emotional release. The amygdala awakens first, but it does not awaken in the same way it did during the day. During waking hours, the amygdala reacts to threat, stress, and uncertainty. It keeps you safe, sharp, and aware. In REM sleep, the amygdala becomes active in an entirely different context. There is no outside world to protect you from. There is no danger, no social dynamic, no task. The amygdala's activation here serves a different purpose. It allows you to revisit emotional impressions without fear, without defensiveness. It allows you to feel safely. At the same time, the prefrontal cortex remains in a deeply restful state. The part of your mind that filters emotion, suppresses expression, and maintains rational control goes quiet. This quieting is essential.
Emotional healing cannot happen when the rational mind is commanding or constraining the experience. In waking life, the prefrontal cortex often keeps emotional truth at a distance because the demands of the day require focus and stability. But at night, that control must be lowered. Without the prefrontal cortex's involvement, emotion becomes free to move. This is why dreams during REM sleep can feel vivid, symbolic, emotional, and unfiltered. They are not random. They are emotional expressions moving through a brain where logic and censorship have relaxed. These expressions allow your emotional mind to explore what it experienced during the day in a symbolic and fluid form. This symbolic processing is one of the main ways emotion begins to heal. Your hippocampus plays a quiet but essential role here. It provides the memory fragments that REM sleep will use as material for dreams. But these fragments are not presented in their original form. They are softened, rearranged, combined with other impressions, and blended into new shapes. The hippocampus gently hands emotional material to the dreaming mind and allows the dreaming mind to shape it freely. This process enables emotional detachment. Memories remain, but their emotional charge begins to dissolve. As you enter your first REM cycle, your body undergoes a dramatic shift. Even though the brain becomes active, the body becomes completely still. Your muscles enter atonia, a protective paralysis that prevents you from acting out the emotional scenes unfolding in your dreams. This paradox creates a unique state. Your emotional world becomes vivid and engaged, while your physical world rests in perfect safety. Your body's stillness gives your mind the freedom to go wherever it needs to go. Your breathing changes in this stage. It becomes shallower and more responsive to your dream content. If your dream contains movement, your breath may quicken slightly. If your dream contains calmness, your breath may slow. The same pattern appears in your heart. Your heart rate becomes variable and emotional. These changes reflect the internal emotional journey you are experiencing, but they are contained within the safe boundaries of sleep. No external danger is present. REM sleep allows your brain to revisit emotional themes in a symbolic way. You may dream of places you have never been. You may encounter scenarios that never happened. These scenes are not literal. They are metaphors created by your emotional mind. They allow you to process emotional tone without reliving emotional pain. The dream is the emotional theater where healing is rehearsed safely. The amygdala's activity in this stage supports emotional learning. It helps the brain understand what emotional patterns require adjustment. It signals where emotional energy remains stuck. It identifies unresolved fear, frustration, longing, or grief, but it does so from a distance. The emotional intensity is contained within dream symbolism. You are not facing real danger. You are facing emotional truth. The prefrontal cortex's quietness is equally important. Without judgment, without analysis, without language, emotional energy can move freely. It can shift, it can release, it can soften in ways that waking logic would never allow. In this open emotional space, you can experience feelings without consequences. This freedom is necessary for healing. The hippocampus's use of this stage adjusts emotional memories. It gently weakens the emotional charge attached to certain experiences. It strengthens emotional clarity where needed. It allows you to wake with a sense of emotional organization that you could not create while awake. The emotional brain requires this symbolic nocturnal workshop. Without it, emotional residue would accumulate. Scientists often describe REM sleep as the rehearsal room of the emotional mind. Here, the brain practices emotional responses in a safe environment. It experiments with new emotional patterns. It tests out different reactions. It creates simulations that allow you to become emotionally stronger without real-world consequences. But REM sleep is more than a rehearsal. It is a release. When emotional material becomes too tightly held during the day, REM dreams allow it to dissipate. If sadness stayed unspoken, REM softens it. If fear remained unspoken, REM transforms it. If confusion lingered, REM organizes it. If anger stayed constrained, REM disperses its intensity. Every emotion that did not have the freedom to move during the day finds movement in REM. Your physiological systems support this emotional release. Heart rate variability increases, signaling emotional flexibility. Breath patterns adapt to internal states. Neural pathways strengthen or weaken based on what the emotional world is releasing. Brain chemistry shifts. Neurotransmitters adjust. The emotional mood with which you awake begins forming in this stage. This entire process unfolds without your awareness, yet it is shaping your emotional resilience for the next day. It is softening the edges of what troubled you. It is reducing the sharpness of emotional memories. It is preparing you to face the world with a clearer heart and a steadier mind. When the first REM cycle ends, you emerge back into lighter sleep, but something has already changed inside you. The emotional world that entered night heavy and tangled has begun to loosen. You will return to REM several more times tonight, each cycle bringing deeper emotional refinement. But this first cycle has opened the door. Your emotional landscape has begun its transformation. The healing has started, and the night is only just beginning. After you drift through your first REM cycle, the journey does not stop. The night guides you back into lighter sleep, then into deeper sleep again, and eventually into another ascent toward REM. This repeating architecture is not accidental. Your emotional healing depends on this rhythm. One cycle cannot complete the work. The emotional patterns formed during a single day are too complex, too layered, too deeply tied to memory. Healing requires repetition. It requires the gentle, steady revisiting of emotional networks across several cycles of night. By the time you enter your second round of deep sleep, the emotional landscape inside your brain has changed in subtle ways. The most active emotional circuits from the day have been softened. Emotional charge stored in the amygdala has been partially reduced. The hippocampus has begun reorganizing memory fragments into more stable patterns. What returns to slow-wave sleep now is an emotional world already in the process of transformation. This second descent into deep sleep is not identical to the first. It is deeper in emotional significance. The brain has already cleared the top layer of emotional tension. Now it can reach further. The slow waves that defined your first cycle return, sweeping across the cortex with steady, rhythmic silence. Each wave quiets neurons that were still carrying residual emotional activation. This silence allows another layer of emotional content to settle. During the day, emotional reactions often occur too quickly for the brain to fully understand them. A moment of irritation may pass before you can trace its cause. A sudden sadness may appear without explanation. A surge of joy may emerge unexpectedly. These emotional moments are recorded, but not always interpreted. Slow-wave sleep gives the brain the time and stillness needed to revisit these emotional signatures and begin assigning meaning. In this stage, the hippocampus works more deeply. It begins comparing emotional impressions from the day with emotional impressions stored from years before. This comparison is essential. It helps you understand what emotional themes are repeating and what emotional patterns might require adjustment. If a moment from the day connects to something unresolved from the past, slow-wave sleep identifies this connection. It prepares the emotional material to be processed in the next REM cycle. Your amygdala continues resting in this stage. Its lowered activity allows the hippocampus to examine emotional memories without activating fear or stress. The absence of fear is one of the most important conditions for emotional healing. Without the amygdala's calmness, the past would feel threatening. The night would become a place of fear rather than restoration. Instead, the emotional mind explores past impressions from a position of safety. Safety is the soil in which emotional healing grows. Meanwhile, the prefrontal cortex remains quiet. It does not judge emotional material. It does not suppress it. It does not force it into rational categories. This absence of judgment is protective. The emotional mind cannot heal when it feels watched or controlled. It must move freely, organically, and softly. Slow-wave sleep provides this freedom. Your body mirrors this emotional quiet. Heart rate remains low. Muscles stay deeply relaxed. Blood vessels maintain their gentle dilation. Cortisol remains suppressed. This peaceful physiology allows emotional material to move without interference. The emotional systems rely on these physical signs of safety. Calmness in the body creates calmness in the emotional mind. As slow-wave sleep begins to lighten, the emotional material that was sorted and stabilized becomes ready for REM. The brain will now begin its second emotional reprocessing cycle. You re-enter REM sleep with a different emotional landscape. The first cycle peeled away the surface tension. The second cycle reaches deeper into the emotional architecture. Dreams become more symbolic. They may contain more complex imagery. They may explore themes that were too closely guarded during the day. Even if you do not recall these dreams, the emotional movement within them leaves a lasting imprint. The amygdala becomes active again, but its activation now reflects a healing context. It is revisiting emotional scenes from a position of safety. It is not reacting, it is rewriting. The hippocampus provides memory fragments tied to emotional patterning. These fragments appear in dreams as symbolic elements: a shifting room, a distant figure, a softened version of a troubling event, a landscape that reflects emotional shape rather than reality. These symbols allow the brain to explore the emotional truth of a memory without reliving its pain. The prefrontal cortex continues its quiet retreat. Because logic is muted, the dreaming mind is free to reimagine emotional possibilities. It can create outcomes that never occurred. It can reverse emotional power dynamics. It can soften emotional injuries. It can give you the emotional resolution that waking life denied you. This resolution is not literal, it is symbolic, but the brain responds to symbolic emotional resolution with the same sense of relief as if the event had truly been resolved. This is one of the most profound aspects of emotional healing during sleep. The brain does not require real-world resolution to heal. It requires emotional resolution, and dreams provide that resolution through symbolism and metaphor. During this second REM cycle, your emotional brain begins integrating the softened emotional material into a more adaptive framework. Neural pathways that supported emotional reactivity weaken. Pathways that support emotional resilience strengthen. Synapses adjust their sensitivity. Neurotransmitter levels shift. The emotional architecture of the brain is being remodeled. Your body responds to this emotional reorganization. Heart rate variability increases again, reflecting healthy emotional flexibility. breath rhythms shift with the emotional tones of dreams. Even though your body remains still, it is deeply connected to the emotional movement within your brain. The body and emotional mind heal together. As the second REM cycle ends, another transformation has occurred. Emotional tension has reduced further. Emotional patterns that once felt rigid have begun to loosen. Emotional memories have been softened, reshaped, and reorganized. You may not remember the dreams that carried this transformation, but the emotional clarity they created will follow you into the next day. You cycle through sleep again, back into light sleep, back into deeper sleep, and eventually toward another REM cycle. Each of these cycles continues the emotional healing process. Layer by layer, the night lifts emotional weight from your heart. Layer by layer, it helps your emotional brain reorganize itself into a more stable and resilient form. Over the course of these cycles, your emotional world becomes less tangled, emotional reactions become less sensitive, emotional clarity increases, emotional strength grows. This growth is often subtle. You may not notice it moment by moment, but you feel it in the ease with which you greet the morning. You feel it in the steadiness with which you approach challenges. You feel it in the softness that returns to your thoughts. The night has given your emotional world the structure it needs. But the deepest emotional healing is still ahead. As the cycles continue, your brain will enter a longer and richer REM period later in the night. That stage will bring the most profound emotional transformation. For now, your emotional networks rest between cycles. Your breath flows softly. Your body remains still. Your emotional mind waits in the dark, ready for the next step in its healing journey. As the night unfolds and you move deeper into its repeating cycles, something begins to change in the emotional landscape of REM sleep. The first REM cycle opened the door to emotional movement. The second cycle softened deeper patterns. But it is the late-night REM cycles, those that occur after hours of sleep have passed, that hold the most profound power. These cycles carry the emotional architecture that shapes how you will feel tomorrow and how you will hold your emotional world in the days to come. By this stage of the night, your body has entered a rhythm of complete physiological trust. The parasympathetic system maintains a steady dominance. Your heart moves in gentle variations that reflect emotional processing. Your breath remains soft and fluid. Your muscles stay in perfect stillness, protected by REM atonia. Your body's physical safety allows your emotional mind to explore without restraint. Your brain prepares for this late-night work with a subtle shift. The transitions between sleep stages become smoother. The descent into slow wave sleep becomes easier. The ascent into REM becomes more fluid. Your brain is not fighting sleep now. It is fully immersed in its architecture. This immersion allows emotional processes to unfold with a natural rhythm that does not require effort or conscious intention. When the next REM cycle begins, the emotional centers of the brain light up more strongly than before. The amygdala becomes highly active, but not in a way associated with fear. Instead, it becomes expressive. It opens emotional channels and allows the brain to engage with feelings that have been carried for months, years, or even decades. These are deeper emotional layers, ones that daylight rarely touches. The hippocampus continues to deliver memory fragments into the dream environment, but now these fragments are older, more symbolic, and more deeply tied to emotional patterns. Your brain is no longer simply processing the events of the previous day. It is exploring the emotional architecture that has shaped your behavior, your reactions, your fears, and your hopes throughout your life. This exploration is a form of emotional repair that cannot be achieved through conscious reflection alone. The prefrontal cortex remains quiet, allowing these emotional explorations to occur without judgment, without logic, without inhibition. Your emotional brain can reshape itself more freely. This freedom is essential. When the prefrontal cortex is active, emotional material becomes constrained, evaluated, and often pushed aside. In late-night REM, emotional truth is allowed to move. Dreams in this stage become more vivid, more fluid, more symbolic, and sometimes more emotionally charged. These dreams may draw on multiple time periods at once. They may blend people, places, or emotions in ways that make no logical sense, but make perfect emotional sense. The dreaming brain is not bound by time or chronology. It is bound by emotional relevance. In this fluid dream world, the amygdala and hippocampus communicate intensely. Emotional memories are softened, reorganized, and integrated into broader emotional frameworks. Conflicts that remained unresolved during earlier cycles may now rise and meet symbolic resolution. Fragments of emotional memory that were held aside earlier in the night may now be transformed. The emotional brain is rewriting itself. This emotional rewriting is not simply a psychological experience, it is a biological one. Synapses that connect emotional circuits adjust their strength. Neuronal pathways that supported unhelpful emotional patterns weaken. Pathways that support healthier emotional responses strengthen. The brain is shaping emotional resilience at the cellular level. Deep within the limbic system, neurotransmitters shift to support this process. Norepinephrine levels remain unusually low in REM sleep. This absence allows emotional memories to be revisited without triggering stress responses. It also permits the emotional mind to create new associations without fear. This is one reason why REM sleep is considered essential for emotional learning. Without norepinephrine, the brain can safely experiment with new emotional reactions. Your body reflects the emotional intensity of this stage. Heart rate may fluctuate more noticeably. Breathing may change rhythm, but these shifts remain safe. They signal that your emotional brain is fully active and fully protected. You are experiencing emotional intensity without danger, emotional expression without consequence, emotional exploration without fear. This late-night REM cycle is also when the brain practices emotional flexibility. It runs simulations. It tests how different emotional responses might feel. It rehearses future reactions. If a moment of your life requires a new emotional approach, REM sleep gives you the chance to experience that approach symbolically. This rehearsal has real neurological effects. When you wake, your emotional responses to similar situations may feel different. You may feel less overwhelmed, less reactive, more capable of engaging with emotional life calmly. The emotional architecture being built in this stage shapes your emotional personality. It influences how you regulate emotion, how you respond to stress, how you connect with others, and how you understand yourself. This shaping happens not through conscious decision, but through the gentle, continuous process of emotional reorganization in REM sleep. Your dreams may become more expansive during this stage. They may explore themes of movement, journey, transformation, or release. These themes reflect the emotional work being done. They are the language of the emotional brain. Even if you do not remember the dream, your emotional brain remembers the process. It carries the results into your waking life. As the REM cycle deepens, Your emotional networks reach a near-complete engagement. The amygdala, hippocampus, anterior cingulate cortex, and other emotional regions synchronize their activity. They move together in patterns that reflect emotional integration. At the same time, the logical centers of the brain remain quiet. This state allows the emotional brain to become more unified than at any other time in your life. This unity creates emotional coherence. Coherence is the feeling that your emotional world makes sense, even if you cannot explain why. It is the feeling of inner alignment. It is the calm that arises when emotional memory and emotional interpretation match. REM sleep creates this coherence. It resolves conflicts. It softens emotional edges. It brings harmony to the emotional mind. As the cycle continues, your brain begins releasing emotional residue that no longer serves you. This release may appear symbolically in dreams as letting go, falling, opening, shedding, transforming. These symbols reflect the emotional brain discarding patterns that have become too heavy to carry. The release is subtle, it is gentle, but it is powerful enough to influence your emotional behavior when you wake. By the time this late-night REM cycle begins to fade, your emotional world has undergone a profound shift. You have rewritten emotional memory networks. You have released emotional tension that did not belong to you anymore. You have reorganized emotional structures that were shaped by past experiences. You have strengthened emotional resilience. All of this has happened without conscious effort. As the cycle ends, you drift back into lighter sleep, but something inside you has changed. You are moving toward a deeper emotional equilibrium. You are becoming emotionally clear, emotionally grounded, emotionally prepared for the next day. One more stage of the night remains. Emotional healing is not yet complete. The night will soon guide you into the quietest hours, where emotional restoration reaches its final and most delicate form. There is a moment deep in the night when everything inside you becomes quieter than at any other time. These are the hours when the world outside your window has fallen silent, when even movement in your environment slows to a near standstill. The night reaches its stillest point, and in this stillness, your emotional system begins one of its most delicate forms of healing. By the time you enter these quiet hours, you have already traveled through cycles of slow-wave sleep and REM sleep, each one contributing to the softening and reshaping of your emotional world. Yet, emotional healing is not a single action. It is a continuation, a layering, a settling that requires both movement and stillness. The deeper hours of night exist to give your emotional brain the space it needs to stabilize the changes REM has created. You drift into these hours without noticing. The shifting patterns of sleep take you from late-night REM into a light but profoundly restorative stage. This is a stage where the brain's electrical activity becomes more balanced. The transitions between different sleep depths become smooth. Your breath settles into a rhythm so gentle you may not notice it moving. Your heartbeat follows with a steady calm. Your muscles remain fully relaxed. The nervous system reaches its lowest point of physiological demand. This period of stillness is not empty. It is the ground on which emotional stability is built. After the emotionally active landscapes of REM, the brain needs a place to settle, to organize, and to integrate. The emotional circuits that were illuminated with symbolic movement now begin to cool. The amygdala's intensity softens. The hippocampus slows its activity. The prefrontal cortex remains quiet but begins to stir slightly, not to judge or restrict emotion, but to prepare for the gradual return of cognitive clarity. During these hours, the emotional brain does not attempt to process new material. That part of the work is done. Instead, it focuses on stabilizing what has been changed. Emotional healing requires both transformation and consolidation. Without consolidation, emotional changes would fade when morning arrives. Without transformation, emotional wounds would remain untouched. This quiet stage is the bridge between the two. Your neurotransmitter balance reflects this settling. Certain neuromodulators rise slightly to support calmness. Others decrease to maintain the softness of the emotional state. The absence of norepinephrine continues, which protects you from emotional intrusion. Serotonin remains low, allowing the emotional circuits to remain flexible and unguarded. Acetylcholine, which supports REM intensity, reduces. This reduction brings emotional tone into a stable state without awakening emotional volatility. Your body supports this emotional quiet with physical signs of safety. Cortisol remains low. This is essential. If cortisol were to rise prematurely, emotional circuits would become alert again. They would begin scanning for threat. They would lose the softness that healing requires. These quiet hours ensure that the emotional brain remains deeply protected, deeply safe. The heart contributes to emotional stability in ways that are often overlooked. Heart rate variability reflects the flexibility of your emotional system. During these hours, heart rate variability enters a range that promotes emotional resilience. The subtle expansion and contraction of your heart rhythm sends signals through the vagus nerve to the emotional centers of your brain. These signals tell your brain that your body is safe enough to maintain emotional openness. This emotional openness is fragile. It is not the openness of vulnerability. It is the openness of healing. It is the openness that emerges when emotional defenses have relaxed, when emotional tension has softened, and when emotional patterns have loosened enough to allow transformation. Your breathing becomes a quiet guide in this stage. It moves without resistance. It flows in a way that supports nervous system balance. Breath is one of the oldest physiological signals of emotional safety. When breath is free, the emotional brain trusts that the environment is safe. When breath is tight, the emotional brain interprets danger. In these hours, breath remains soft and steady. This softness gives your emotional circuits permission to settle. Slow wave activity does not dominate in this period, but it still appears in light traces. These traces gently reinforce the emotional quiet. They lower activity further. They help the brain store the emotional adjustments made earlier in the night. They smooth the neural transitions that accompany emotional healing. During this time, memories, feelings, and impressions that were processed earlier in REM begin to sink deeper into long-term emotional networks. These are not memories you consciously recall. They are emotional templates, emotional structures, patterns of interpretation that shape how you feel in waking life. The quiet hours of night give these structures room to settle into place. If earlier in the night your brain processed emotional pain, softened it, or reshaped it, these quiet hours take that new emotional pattern and attach it into your nervous system. If earlier in the night your brain reduced emotional sensitivity, these hours integrate the new calmness into your emotional circuits. If earlier in the night your brain created emotional clarity, these hours reinforce that clarity. This consolidation is why emotional healing through sleep endures. Without it, emotional relief would vanish upon waking. Instead, the emotional brain builds stability in darkness, layer by layer. As the quiet hours continue, the brain's internal temperature decreases slightly. This cooling reflects the peak of metabolic rest. It creates ideal conditions for neural stability. The emotional mind does not thrive in heat or metabolic activity. It thrives in coolness, calmness, and stillness. The brain takes advantage of this cooling to solidify its emotional adjustments. Throughout these hours, your awareness remains far from waking life. You are not dreaming intensely. You are not thinking. You are not remembering. You are resting in a depth of unconsciousness that gives emotional systems the space they need. Emotional healing is not only about what you feel, it is about what you no longer need to feel. These hours allow unneeded emotional tension to dissolve. The brain continues to maintain the emotional reductions accomplished earlier. It reinforces new emotional associations. It builds new emotional pathways. It strengthens emotional interpretations that support resilience. This reinforcement is gentle, but it shapes the emotional patterns you will carry into the morning. As the quiet hours move toward their end, your emotional landscape reaches a level of equilibrium. Emotional tone becomes balanced. Emotional patterns become smooth. Emotional reactivity becomes softened. The emotional brain enters a state that can support the final REM cycle of the night. This final REM cycle will bring the deepest emotional integration, but it can only be effective if the emotional system has been stabilized during these quiet hours. In this still state, your emotional world rests. Your breath continues its calm rhythm. Your heart maintains its gentle fluctuations. Your muscles remain soft. Your mind floats in a depth where no emotional disturbance can reach you. Outside, the night remains dark. Inside, your emotional system is being prepared for its final healing stage. You are held in darkness without weight. You are carried by rhythms older than memory. You are resting in the quietest emotional place the human body knows. The night has guided you this far. It will guide you deeper still. Soon, the final REM cycle will begin, bringing with it the emotional clarity that morning depends on. As the night nears its final arc, your body prepares to enter the longest and most emotionally meaningful REM cycle you will experience before waking. This final cycle does not simply revisit emotional material, it completes the work of the night. Every earlier cycle has softened, reorganized, and restructured layers of emotion. Now the brain draws these layers together, refining them into a coherent emotional landscape that will carry you into the morning. This transition begins quietly. You move out of the deep, restorative silence of the late-night hours. Your breathing remains soft, but it takes on slight variations. Your heart becomes more expressive. Neural activity begins to increase in the regions responsible for emotion, memory, and imagination. There is no abrupt shift. The changes unfold naturally, as if your mind has been waiting for this final chance to heal. When the REM state opens again, it resembles a widening of inner space. Emotional circuits that rested in stillness now awaken with renewed flexibility. The amygdala regains its full emotional sensitivity, but it does so in a protected environment. During the day, emotional sensitivity can feel overwhelming. During REM, it becomes an opportunity for release. The amygdala revisits emotional themes, but no longer carries the same tension it held before the night began. In this final REM cycle, the hippocampus provides memory fragments with greater richness. These fragments are not simply experiences from the previous day. They are emotional patterns that may have been forming for months or years. The hippocampus delivers these patterns with the expectation that the dreaming mind will reshape them into something lighter. This process is essential for emotional flexibility. Without it, emotional patterns would become rigid, repeating themselves without adaptation. The prefrontal cortex remains quiet, though it stirs slightly more than in earlier cycles. It does not analyze or judge. It simply maintains a soft boundary around the dream, providing just enough structure to keep emotional imagery from overwhelming the mind. This delicate balance allows for deeper emotional exploration without risk. Your dreams in this final cycle may contain themes of movement, transformation, reunion, or release. They may feel more complete, as if the emotional storylines that emerged earlier in the night now reach their conclusion. Even if you do not remember these dreams consciously, your emotional brain experiences them fully. Dreams are not entertainment, they are emotional processes. They are the brain's symbolic language for healing. During this stage, the emotional brain engages in integration. Emotional fragments scattered across different memories are drawn into alignment. Conflicting emotional impressions become softened. Emotional confusion becomes clarified. Emotional shocks become processed in ways that waking thought could not achieve. The emotional mind becomes whole again. This integration is a neurological event. Neurons that were firing chaotically earlier in the night now move toward coherence. Emotional pathways that once carried excessive sensitivity ease into balance. Synaptic strength adjusts. Neurotransmitter levels shift. The emotional architecture of the brain becomes more stable. Your body mirrors this emotional movement. Heart rate variability increases, signaling enhanced emotional adaptability. Your breathing deepens in moments, responding to inner emotional tides. Even though your muscles remain still, they are not inactive. They are participating in a physical form of emotional release. Muscles carry emotional memory. When emotional circuits reorganize, muscle patterns shift, preparing the body to carry emotion with less tension. Your autonomic nervous system assists this process. The parasympathetic system, long dominant through the night, supports emotional openness. The sympathetic system remains quiet but ready. This balance creates the internal conditions for emotional clarity. Without it, the final REM cycle would lack the stability required for deep emotional transformation. In this cycle, your emotional mind also rehearses responses to future challenges. This rehearsal is not conscious. You are not imagining specific scenarios. Instead, the brain simulates emotional patterns that might arise in the coming days. It tests new emotional responses. It strengthens ones that will serve you better. This rehearsal prepares you to face emotions with more steadiness when you wake. The final REM cycle is also when the emotional brain releases old emotional imprints. These imprints may come from earlier in the week or earlier in your life. They may be small, subtle impressions or deeper ones, more persistent. If the brain determines that these emotional burdens no longer serve your well-being, it loosens their neural connections. They fade into the background of your emotional memory. You may not know which emotional burdens you have released, but you will wake feeling lighter because of them. As the cycle deepens, the amygdala works with the hippocampus to refine emotional associations. If a memory held too much fear, that fear softens. If a memory held too much grief, that grief becomes more manageable. If a memory held confusion, the confusion becomes clearer. The emotional mind does not change past events, it changes your relationship to them. This is the essence of emotional healing. Your dreams may present symbolic acts of release. You may let something fall away. You may leave a place that once felt heavy. You may watch something dissolve, transform, or disappear. These symbolic resolutions represent the emotional shifts occurring in neural circuits. The dream is the expression. The healing is the underlying neurological change. As the REM cycle reaches its peak, emotional clarity emerges. The emotional brain has released tension. It has organized memory. It has reshaped emotional networks. It has rehearsed emotional responses. It has restored emotional coherence. Now it begins to quiet once again. Your heart responds with a soft settling. Your breath becomes smoother. Neural activity in emotional regions becomes more stable. The brain begins preparing for the transition into waking life. But the emotional mind does not rush. It completes its adjustments with care. Morning is still a distance away. The night continues to hold you. In these final moments of REM, emotional integration becomes complete. You may not remember what was healed, released, or reshaped, but you will feel the result. The emotional brain works in silence, preparing you for the clarity that will meet you when the first light touches the sky. As the dream dissolves, the emotional world becomes calm. Tension has been replaced with softness, confusion with quiet understanding, emotional weight with emotional steadiness. You drift into a brief stage of light sleep, carrying with you the emotional clarity that only night can create. The night has nearly completed its work. The emotional mind is ready for dawn. As the final dream dissolves and the last REM cycle softens into lighter sleep, your emotional world enters its most delicate stage of the night. This is the threshold between the inner world and the outer one, the place where the emotional healing of sleep begins to take shape in waking form. Morning is still quiet, still distant, but the first physiological preparations for wakefulness have begun. It is here, in the moments before dawn, that your emotional system completes its renewal. You drift into stage N1, or light sleep, again, but this time it carries a different feeling. Earlier in the night, light sleep was the descent into deeper healing. Now it is the ascent back toward consciousness. Your brain waves begin to shift into faster rhythms. Your breathing remains soft, yet slightly more dynamic. Your heart feels the beginning of the day before your mind does. The emotional brain has completed its deep restructuring, and now it must prepare to return you to the world with a sense of balance, clarity, and resilience. During this time, the prefrontal cortex slowly begins to awaken. It does not suddenly resume control, nor does it interrupt the emotional mind. Instead, it quietly re-enters the system with gentleness. It begins to re-establish judgment, interpretation, and reasoning, but without overriding the emotional adjustments that REM sleep has made. This careful reawakening ensures that emotional healing is not undone. The emotional patterns you formed overnight must be preserved as you return to consciousness. Your amygdala calms further during this stage. It has completed its emotional processing. It has released tension and reorganized emotional associations. Now it settles into a balanced state. It is no longer hypervigilant, no longer reactive. It is prepared for the new day with a softer baseline. The emotional world you carried into the night has changed. It has become lighter, clearer, more spacious. The hippocampus also shifts into a waking mode. It begins preparing to form new memories, but it does so with the emotional clarity established overnight. Memories formed today will not attach to yesterday's emotional weight. They will attach to the new emotional baseline created through sleep. This is one of the hidden gifts of emotional healing at night. Each morning is a chance to begin again, not by forgetting the past, but by carrying it in a lighter way. As the brain prepares to reawaken, your body follows. Cortisol, which remained low throughout the night, begins to rise naturally. This rise does not signify stress. It is a healthy, necessary part of waking. Cortisol prepares the body for alertness. It increases blood pressure slightly, initiates metabolic readiness, and signals to various organs that a shift is coming. But because emotional healing has been successful, this rise in cortisol does not create anxiety. It supports clarity. Your sympathetic nervous system begins to stir, but gently. It does not override the parasympathetic system. Instead, both systems blend in a balanced transition. This balance allows the emotional calm of the night to accompany you into waking life. Without emotional healing, this transition could feel harsh or destabilizing. With emotional healing, it feels natural. Your breathing grows a little stronger. Your heart begins to adjust its variability in preparation for the cognitive demands of the day. But throughout these changes, the emotional shifts of the night remain stable. The body does not erase emotional healing, it supports it with physiological readiness. A subtle warming begins inside the brain. As neural activity increases, the brain's temperature rises slightly. This increase supports sensory perception and attention. It brings the emotional brain out of its symbolic landscape and prepares it for reality. But the warming is gradual enough to protect the emotional clarity established overnight. Nothing is rushed. Waking is not an abrupt action. It is a biological unfolding. In this final stage, the emotional brain begins constructing the mood with which you will greet the morning. Moods are not random. They are not produced by a single event. They are built from the emotional patterns shaped during the night. If the emotional brain has released tension, softened fear, processed sadness, or clarified confusion, your morning mood reflects that. If the night has restored emotional resilience, your morning carries that resilience. The emotional brain does not decide your mood in words or conscious thoughts. It sets the tone by adjusting emotional networks. It shapes your baseline by calibrating amygdala sensitivity, hippocampal associations, and prefrontal balance. These calibrations affect how you interpret the world the moment you wake. They determine whether you feel overwhelmed or steady, whether you feel vague heaviness or quiet clarity, whether you feel emotionally scattered or emotionally aligned. Morning mood begins in these final sleep stages. As the waking systems of the brain warm further, sensory networks begin to reactivate. Sounds in the environment register gently. The weight of the blanket returns to your awareness. Light begins to pass through your closed eyelids. These sensory cues do not yank you out of sleep. Instead, they blend with the internal cues of waking. The emotional system continues to stabilize while the sensory world begins returning. During this transition, the emotional brain performs one more essential task. It integrates the emotional insights of the night into your sense of self. This is not a conscious act. You do not feel the adjustment happening, but as the emotional brain returns to waking mode, it blends healed emotional patterns with your identity. This blending ensures that the emotional healing of sleep does not stay in the dream world. It becomes part of your waking life. It shapes how you walk through the day, how you relate to others, how you interpret experiences, and how you respond to challenges. The emotional brain brings its night work into the daylight. In these final moments before waking, your body remains still, but your inner world is vibrant with renewal. The emotional weight you carried yesterday does not belong to you in the same way anymore. The memories remain, but the emotional charge that tied you to them has loosened. Emotional wounds have been softened. Emotional patterns have been reorganized. Emotional clarity has returned. When the moment of waking arrives, consciousness rises gently from the depth of sleep. Your eyes may open slowly. Your breath deepens. Your muscles begin to re-engage with the world. The prefrontal cortex reasserts its leadership, but now it does so with the support of a healed emotional foundation. Your emotional brain is not starting the day exhausted or tangled. It is beginning anew, balanced by the work of the night. Morning arrives with a sense of emotional spaciousness, a clarity that was not present yesterday, a softness in your chest, a steadying in your breath, a groundedness that comes from having been carried through emotional repair by the night. Even if the world outside feels busy, your emotional landscape feels calmer. This emotional rebirth does not erase your challenges. It prepares you to meet them with steadiness. It does not eliminate your past. It gives you the ability to hold your past without being overwhelmed. It does not rewrite your personality. It strengthens the emotional flexibility that allows you to grow. As the first real moments of morning unfold, your emotional brain transitions fully into waking life. But the healing does not end when you open your eyes. You carry the night's work with you. Emotional memory has been reshaped. Emotional patterns have been softened. Emotional resilience has been strengthened. You begin the day with a new emotional foundation. And as you rise, the night that held you releases you gently. It has given you what you needed. It has quieted what was unsettled. It has softened what was sharp. It has renewed what was worn. It has helped you carry your emotional world with more ease. You step into the morning with an emotional landscape that has been cared for. You enter the day with a sense of quiet readiness. You begin again, shaped by the healing that unfolded in darkness.
As your night comes to a close, take a moment to feel where you are now compared to where you were when this story began. You have traveled through the deep architecture of your emotional healing, through the quiet layers of slow-wave sleep and the vivid landscapes of REM. You have watched your emotional world soften, reorganize, and settle into a state of balance that only night can create. Your brain has carried you through its ancient rhythm of restoration. It has lifted the weight you brought into sleep. It has untangled emotional patterns that were too complex to face while awake. It has rewritten the emotional associations that shaped your days. It has assembled a steadier foundation beneath your feet. You may not remember the dreams that held your emotional healing, but the healing itself remains. It lives now in the way your breath feels a little deeper, the way your body rests with a little more ease, the way your thoughts feel quieter, the way your heart feels softer. This is the work your brain has done for you, silently, gently, without asking for anything in return. If you are listening as the morning approaches, carry this clarity with you. Walk into the day knowing that your emotional system has been restored. The resilience you feel is not a coincidence. It is the result of hours of careful emotional recalibration. You are grounded, you are balanced, you are supported by the healing work your body completed in darkness. And if you are listening at night, on the edge of sleep, let yourself drift toward rest with the knowledge that your emotional brain knows exactly what to do. You do not have to guide it. You do not have to control it. Night has its own intelligence. It will hold your emotional world with the same steady care it has given humanity for thousands of years. You can let go. You are safe to rest. Thank you for sharing this time, for giving your mind and body the room to settle and heal. When you are ready, you may let your eyes close a little heavier or rise gently into the morning light. Either way, may you feel the quiet strength that comes from a night of emotional renewal. Sleep well, or step softly into your new day.